Right now, millions of American retirees are watching their savings melt away month after month. And the most surprising part is that, in most cases, this has nothing to do with overspending or poor financial planning. The problem is simpler than it seems. These people never stopped to question where they were living. They chose a city for the climate, for being close to family, or simply because they'd always lived there and ended up paying a price their retirement wasn't prepared to cover. A well-planned retirement should last 20, 30 years. But in the wrong city, with the wrong cost of living, that money might not even last half of that. It's a silent difference, one that doesn't show up all at once, but slowly eats away at savings year after year, until the moment it's too late to change course. That's why I went looking for real numbers, housing costs, average rent, state taxes, grocery prices, to find the places in the United States where the math actually works out. And today, I'm going to show you the 3 cities that stood out in this analysis. I'll save the best one for last, because the number 1 city on this list completely changes the way most people think about retirement in this country. In 3rd place on this list is Hickory, North Carolina. It's a city most people have never heard of, tucked at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains, far from the tourist routes and the usual best cities to retire lists. And maybe that's exactly why the numbers there remain so favorable. Not many people are looking at this region yet. Let's get to the numbers that really matter. The median home price in Hickory sits around $210,000, well below the national average of over $400,000. For those who prefer to rent, the average comes out to around $850 a month, including a 2-bedroom apartment in safe, well-located neighborhoods. Add to that grocery prices running about 15% below the national average, and an electricity bill that also comes in under the national standard. And the math starts to make sense. This is where the promise of this video starts to hold up. A couple receiving the average Social Security benefit, around $1,900 a month combined, can cover rent, groceries, basic bills, and still have money left over, all within a budget that comes out to under $1,000 per person. This isn't theory. It's what's already happening for people who've made this move. And the reason isn't a coincidence. Hickory spent decades as an industrial hub for furniture and textiles, and when those factories shrank, the city's cost of living never caught up with the growth other regions saw. The result today is a city with solid infrastructure, quality hospitals, and an established retiree community, but with prices that still seem frozen in time. Retirees who've moved there report something a lot of people think is no longer possible in the United States: having money left over at the end of the month, even living solely off a fixed benefit. Instead of counting down the days until their savings run out, these people are, for the first time in years, actually able to set some of what they receive aside. But Hickory is just the starting point of this list. The next city on it raises that bar to a completely different level. In 2nd place is Augusta, Georgia. Most people know this city for one thing: the golf tournament that dominates the headlines 1 week a year. But outside of that brief moment in the spotlight, Augusta lives a reality completely different from the image television shows. And that reality is exactly what matters to anyone planning a retirement. The numbers here are even stronger than Hickory's. The median home price in Augusta is under $190,000, less than half the national average. That means a retiree selling a home in a pricier state, and California, New Jersey, or even parts of the more touristy Florida, each could buy a house outright in Augusta and still have enough left over to boost their retirement fund for years. For those who prefer to rent, the average comes to around $1,100 a month, a bit higher than Hickory, but still well below what you'd pay in practically any coastal city in the country. What really sets Augusta apart is the balance between low cost and big city infrastructure. Unlike many small cities where low prices come paired with few hospitals or limited services, Augusta is home to one of the largest medical complexes in the southeastern United States, including a nationally recognized university health center. That matters, and it matters a lot, because for people in their senior years, quick access to good hospitals weighs just as heavily as the rent. Running the numbers precisely, a couple receiving the average Social Security benefit can cover rent, supplemental health insurance, groceries, and transportation, and still close out the month with room to spare without touching a cent of their savings. That's the difference between a retirement that runs dry by year 12 as happens to so many Americans in expensive cities, and one that lasts 20, 30 years without financial setbacks. And even with all these favorable numbers, Augusta still isn't number one on this list. The next city brings all of this together: low prices, big city infrastructure, and adds one financial detail that completely changes the final result. And finally, the number one city on this list: Tallahassee, Florida. And before anything else, we need to clear up a wrong impression. When people think of Florida, most think of Miami, Orlando, or Fort Lauderdale, $4,000 a month condos, endless traffic, and the constant fear of a hurricane knocking on the door. Tallahassee has none of that. It sits inland, far from the most vulnerable coastline, and has a cost of living that few people associate with Florida. Here's the number that changes everything. Average rent in Tallahassee is under $1,000 a month, even for a two-bedroom apartment in well-located neighborhoods near hospitals and grocery stores. The median home price sits around $265,000 de door, a competitive figure by the state standards. But the detail that truly sets Tallahassee apart from every other city on this list is this: Florida doesn't charge a state income tax. That's not a small detail. It means every dollar that comes in from Social Security, a private pension, or a 401k withdrawal stays whole in the retiree's pocket without the state taking a cut first. In states like North Carolina or Georgia, even with a low cost of living, there's still a state income tax bite on retirement income. In Florida, that bite simply doesn't exist. Put those two things together, rent under $1,000 and zero income tax, and the result is straightforward. A couple living solely on Social Security, receiving the national average of roughly $1,900 combined, can pay rent on a two-bedroom home, do their monthly grocery shopping, put gas in the car, and still go out to dinner once in a while. All without touching a single cent of the savings it took a lifetime to build. And there's one more factor few people consider. Tallahassee is a college town, home to Florida State University and Florida A&M. That means top-tier hospitals, an active cultural scene, and a diverse community that doesn't revolve solely around retirees, which, for a lot of people at this stage of life, is exactly what helps avoid the isolation that so many retirees-only towns end up creating. It's this combination, low cost, zero income tax, big city infrastructure, and real quality of life, that puts Tallahassee at the top of this list. The pattern behind Hickory, Augusta, and Tallahassee repeats itself in other parts of the country. Mid-sized cities with well-functioning hospitals, a nearby regional airport, an anchor university or medical center, but without the housing boom that's already taken over places like Austin, Nashville, or much of coastal Florida. These are markets that real estate media call second-tier cities, and they keep delivering what big cities promise, just at a price that's stayed behind. There's a practical reason this keeps happening, and it's worth understanding before wrapping up this video. Most searches for best city to retire in the United States still revolve around a handful of names that have been repeated for decades: South Florida, Arizona, parts of the Carolinas closer to the beach. Those places have already gone up in price precisely because all that attention concentrated there. Cities like Tallahassee, Inland, or Augusta, far from the coast, simply never entered that equation, and the prices still reflect that today. But that window isn't permanent. Every time one of these cities shows up in a list, in a news story, in a video like this one, a few more people pay attention, a few more people look up median home prices, and little by little demand starts shifting there too. It already happened in cities like Greenville, South Carolina, and Chattanooga, Tennessee, which 10 years ago had prices similar to what Hickory and Augusta have today, and which are no longer considered cheap. That's why the people who are really paying attention aren't waiting for these cities to make headlines. They're doing the math now, comparing today's cost of living with what's left of their retirement funds, and deciding with the numbers in hand, not rushing, but also not putting the decision off for too long. If this video helped you see options you hadn't considered before, hit like, because it helps the channel bring this kind of information to more people who are in the same stage of life as you. And if you want to keep following analyses like this, city by city, number by number, no fluff, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, because every week there's a new city joining this conversation.